Welcome to today's Audit Tuesday. So the YouAttest podcast highlights our advanced identity audit abilities, especially the ability to allow enterprises to conduct multiple rounds of attestation on a single entitlement. So to help explain the value and functionality, we're lucky to have Dan Noonan, GRC expert who has utilized YouAttest advanced functionality in his accounts. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Ashley. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
So first of all, Dan, can you please introduce yourself to the Audit Tuesday audience?
I am a semi-retired IT professional. Been working in the IT area for far too many years, probably going on close to 50 years now, and do predominantly audit work now as a consultant.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. So Dan, you're often involved in complex audits and specifically identity audits on valued resources. So can you detail why enterprises that you work with spend so much time and effort on auditing their entitlements?
Well, the clients that I'm working with now, quarterly audits to do their user audits. And the time consumption, because of so many applications that they have. If you think about it, some of these companies have grown through acquisition, and every time they acquire somebody, they acquire more applications. And if you're going to start looking at audits, like the company that I'm working with quite a bit right now has upwards of 40 or 50 different applications with 40 or 50 different user sets. And they have over 20,000 people working in the company. So think about the variety of the amount of people on the various applications. We do audits from a small application of 5, 6, 7, 10 users, very small, to a large of 4,000 or 5,000 users. And so, with that many users, that and the frequency that you have to do these things, if you don't put the automation to work, you're never going to finish. You're finishing an audit as you're starting an audit. Every quarter, finish 2,000 users, start 2,000 users. It's like a vicious circle.
Yeah, so you briefly mentioned it. So this level of complexity calls for the need for automation, right? You can't do this
Absolutely.
manually.
Absolutely. Without the automation, like I said, you'd be finishing an audit and starting an audit. And of course, just like many places, a lot of people doing the attestation of the audits are the same across multiple applications. So if you think about that, then you have multiple, we have one individual, unfortunately, Jeff, who he's so embedded in so many of the applications. If we didn't give him the automation, he never has time for his normal job.
So you've utilized YouAttest to help you automate this identity process, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so with YouAttest, you used it to conduct a complex review where multiple reviewers were asked to attest to a single entitlement. So can you talk a little bit about that, like why it was needed and how YouAttest simplified the process?
Sure. When we do a user audit, we have multiple levels of validating the work. So we have one individual, let's just say, who does the audit for 100 users. And when he finishes it, then you have an audit requirement of somebody validating his work. So you have level 2 being the validation. Then we have a third level, which is the audit team. So as an example, in YouAttest, say using the 100 users as an example, say we wanted to not kill off, but terminate 5 users' work. The first person would validate the people, log them as being 5 users need to be terminated. The second one would validate it and say that, yes, I agree with it. And then the third person would be the audit team, and they would execute. So it would go right along the lines, and it would be the third person would execute, and just the third set of eyes. It seems like an awful lot, but that third set of eyes is also the person who then puts the paperwork forward. The end of the audit, here's a completed audit, moves it along into the bucket. So that's kind of how we do it. And not all of them require 3 levels. Like I mentioned, some of them are only two levels. It might be a very small audit, such as like an Okta administrator, where there's only a few people, and you would have it, the first person audit it, and it would go directly to the audit team for validation and say, all right, this is done, and move it along. So
Perfect. So let's show how the product has simplified the task. So Garrett, can you show one slide about how YouAttest works?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. Real world experience and great job. So here's YouAttest. It's a cloud-based tool, right? Multi-tenanted for customers, multi-tenanted for consultants and MSPs who can do this for multiple customers. So many organizations start with the HR information, but all organizations use YouAttest and connect them to their IAM. Why is that? Well, the IAM is basically this is I love it when someone said it is the it's the tip of the spear for identity. It's what people are using. It's where your group's information. It's where your reviewers will come from, and it's where we can obtain not only authorization information, but also the how to communicate to the reviewers, which you'll see in the demo. Okay, so this gets imbibed into YouAttest quickly and rapidly in minutes, not months. Okay, and then every organization, including the ones we've worked with, Dan, say, but Garrett, we've got this other information, which they rock and rolling. We'll use your IAM and your groups and your users to audit that information as well. We've got enterprises uploading 65 megabytes of CSV data into us. Okay, so this is where Dan and his compatriots work, right here. They become the risk manager. They'll click the buttons that Kashif's about to do, and they'll conduct the review. Remember, the review, according to the external auditors who matter, a review is not done by this man, nor is it done by this person. It is done by the business owners and the managers of those users. And that's the task of a user access review, is to actually facilitate our review by the people who know and then provide that information back to the enterprise. So these managers who live in these entities that we obtain through this SSO connection, they do it as certify, revoke, or they can redelegate. They can say, oh, Jane moved over to Bob's, Dan moved over to Tim's. And this is all automated. And then YouAttest creates the evidence. The evidence, a report of the work done that can be used for, of course, to clean up the entitlements, but also turn into your SOC report, for your SOX 2 report, for your GDPR report, for your HIPAA report, etc. All right, no more John Madden lines. Let's take it away.
Kashif, can you show a quick demo?
Of course. Let me just go ahead and share my screen for the demo, and please let me know when you have the visual.
We see it.
Okay, great. So here's the dashboard. I have these two tenants working. This one is particularly this one is integrated with my Okta environment. So here we go. The dashboard, we go into the delegation workflow first before I create an audit. I want to show you how the delegation flow is created. So let's go ahead and create one delegation flow and see how it works. So here you go. You name that delegation workflow according to your requirements, or what is it, what's the purpose for this delegation flow, which application or group is it for. Let's say I call it demo. And now you need to put in these conditions, like you have these 4 different tiers YouAttest gives you. For example, the first one could be the user's manager, then the other one could be the reviewer, then the validator, and maybe the last one could be the internal auditor. It's not necessary you select all 4 of them. It's as per your need. If you need just 2 of these tiers, the middle ones, you just select those. If you need 3, or you can just go on. It gives you up to 4 different tiers and levels of attestations. Let's just start with the reviewer. You just mention the email. Who would you like to be the reviewer of this audit? when you create that and apply that to one of these managers that you're adding here, you can add another rule and maybe select the approver and validator, and you can just put in the email. Who would you like that to be? I'll just put in Garrett, and maybe the third one is the internal auditor to give the final sign off. Maybe it could be Ashley as YA manager, and I'll just save that workflow. Right now, when we go and create an audit, for example, let me just go and create an application audit. So when we go here, create an audit, you'll select the delegation workflow you've just created for that particular audit. For example, here, API integration is my Okta demo. I'll just name it demo 3. So select the time frame. I'll just give them a week or maybe a couple of weeks to complete the task. And then here's the delegation workflow we just saved. So I'll just, maybe demo or whatever I have saved or whatever I named it. I just do this and go to the next screen where I'll be given a list of all the applications that I have in Okta. You can go with, bulk of applications, or you can select multiple applications. If not, just go with a single one as your target, maybe finance application right here, and click done. Now it's fetching the information, it's getting the metadata out of your Okta environment, and it will display it to me in this format here. Now, since there were more than one reviewers involved in the process, it's going to show you all the tiers that you have selected for this delegation workflow. They will appear to the right of your screen under status. The first one is the reviewer, the second one is the validator, and the auditor. All you have to do as an admin is just go in here and delegate them out to these tiers, the reviewer, the validator, and the auditor. It will work in a sequence. Once you confirm, it will first go out to the reviewer. Once the reviewer has done the job, it will go out to the approver. Once he has completed the task, it will go out to the internal auditor. Right now, it's pending with the reviewer, and the status of approver and the internal auditor is in waiting. I'll just go here, click that, and now I should receive an email as a reviewer in my inbox. And here's the delegation email in real time. I'll just open that up, go to the link, and see what I have. And let's do that right now. So it will show up a subset of what I can see as an admin. So I'm a manager, I'm a reviewer. I'll just see these options over here, some limited options, but I'll also see this audit that has been delegated out to me. Now, all these 3 tiers will appear right, right into my audit. All I have to do, for example, just select it in bulk just to show you for the demo purposes. And I'll recommend to certify all these users, right? Now, my job is done. Either I can revoke maybe a couple of them or certify the others, but my recommendations are now done. I can get back to my day job. What I need to do before I go back to my job is to click done when I'm finished with this. It will disappear from my screen. It will end up showing on the next one here, well, on the validator screen, who's the next one in line. So I'll just click done here, and it's gone. But when I go back to my admin view, I'll just click a little refresh, and it will show me the progress. The reviewer has reviewed the audit, right? Now it's the validator's turn. It will end up in his inbox. He will do the same and repeat the process and click done for the audit to end up with the auditor. When he gives the sign off, my audit will be completed, and it will show me the progress in this format here, just like I've done this for my previous audit. Please excuse my internet. And here we go. So once all the tiers have validated, or all the tiers have evaluated all the reviewers, the check marks will appear against those tiers, which means the audit is now complete. It's at 100%. Now, either you can go back, get the report out, or you can execute these in your Okta environment by clicking onto these options, which enables you to execute those changes, especially if there are any revocations. So you can execute those inside your Okta environment. When it comes to the evidence, however, you have two kinds of reports. One is the PDF, which you're looking at. It will give you the whole picture: who reviewed, who was the reviewer, who was the second tier, who was the last tier to give the sign off, the profile attributes of these users involved, in the review process, and so forth. So all the information is here, along with the timestamp and the recommendations made by these reviewers and these tiers. But you can also have this report in the form of a CSV. If you are dealing with a number of users, maybe hundreds of thousands, you can have a CSV exported out of YouAttest, and you can play with the data. You can just make it more presentable according to the needs. So that's the overall delegation workflow, how it works. If you have anything else you want me to show, Garrett, before I move on to the next one.
Oh, we'll have more stuff. I'll let Ashley lead. All good.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Kashif. So Dan, is this what your team used for multiple reviewers in your account?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that Kasha touched on was the reporting. Our users love the reporting,
Good
and
point.
for several reasons. It, it, when you use a multiple person audit and you have, say, hundreds of users, as was mentioned, you don't always do that in one session. So a lot of times they'll print out the report and they'll use that as a working report, but then they can just jump right back into YouAttest and start where they finished off. And so it allows them to have the report to show them how they're working. It gives them a status of the report, and it also allows them to again jump in and out. So they really like the reporting mechanism, and they use for while they're working on it, they use the CSV simply because it's easier to read on a line by line basis. But the second part of that is the auditors love the PDF, the finished product, because that's exactly what they need. They need everything in PDF because, as we all know, you can't edit a PDF. At least that's what the auditors believe. And so the reporting is really used quite a bit in our world.
And Dan, you used YouAttest for group audits. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we use it for group audits as well as application audits, but it's using the group audit is very similar to the application audit, except that the groups are groups of people, and it groups. It could be used across multiple applications, and the same rules apply for us. We use the multi-tiered, and could be one, two, three. We've never used 4 levels, but we used up to 3 levels of user audits within the groups. But we're also using the triggers on the groups. And we do that on some of our critical groups because we don't want to have any surprises when we go in there to find out that most of our critical groups, such as like the Okta admin group, they're pretty static. But when we find out somebody's been added to that group, we'd rather know in advance. And that way there we can get all the documentation together, such as the change control of it was an improved ad and all that to make your life a lot easier. And when you're doing so many of these audits every quarter, those triggers really help us a lot in our critical groups.
Perfect. Kashif, can you show the group triggers?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly I'm showing right now on my screen. So
Perfect.
you can go to the triggers. Basically, Okta has webhooks that we leverage. We utilize those webhooks to create these triggers in YouAttest. So as Dan mentioned, whenever you have an event going on, maybe in the group event, somebody's being added to a group or somebody's being removed from a group. In that case, you will be the first one as an admin to know what's going on, or if an admin designates a person within the organization to know of this change, if something is occurred or in the process of occurring inside your Okta environment, then that person will not only get the notification, but he will have access to an audit created by YouAttest in real time based on that trigger for that person to either approve or disapprove that change. So let me show you this. So here's the create trigger utility in YouAttest. You just name that, and then under conditions, you can add conditions. For example, you can add group events, and you want to know if a user is added to a group. If you want to specify a group, just type the name of that group over here. Otherwise, leave it blank so that whenever a change is made to any of the groups within Okta, within your IAM, then you get to be notified by the tool. Then maybe you can add another condition from the same event that whenever someone is removed from the group, also you need to take action. You need to set up this trigger for whenever this condition is met. What you need to do, you need to create a campaign and assign that campaign to somebody. So it could be a user's manager, it could be an Okta group, it could be an Okta user. So when you decide that who would you like to assign this to, it will give you further options, email ID of that person, Okta group, or who should the alert go out to. Once you save the trigger, whenever this condition is met, that person you just designated here will get the notification, will get the link to the audit, and that audit is going to appear under event audits over here, not under triggers. The triggers are set. Let me just show you when we create the triggers, what they look like. So here are those triggers, and I don't have any in the list, unfortunately, but let me just go back here to the audits and show you when they're met, what do you see in there? So this is an audit created by one of the triggers I set up in my demo. So when you go in there, it shows you if it was an event in the group when you go to more details and see that if a user is being added. So if it's active or inactive, what's the title of the person and so forth. Bunch of information is there, but that person will be able to decide whether to certify or revoke this user. If you revoke the access, that means it's not going to happen inside. It's not going to be created. It's not going to be given access to that particular group, and so forth. So once you do that, let me just show you revoke, and you can then revoke his access from that particular group he's being added to. And you go back and execute those changes on your Okta environment, on your Azure AD or whatever you have in terms of IAM. So these triggers help, help a great deal in doing those audits when you need to be informed when something is changing or somebody is escalating his or her privileges within your Okta or within your IAM. You get to know this first before anything happens to the environment.
Perfect. Thanks, Kashif. So, Garrett, the triggers are a big security feature, right?
Yeah, they are. And first, Kashif, remember, UAttest has that trigger stuff in other IAMs like Entra ID, right? Yep. So we got that supported in Entra ID, otherwise known as their ID. Security feature, right? Dan, didn't one of the companies that you work with turn on the triggers?
Yeah, we've turned on the triggers, and right now I believe we have 4 critical groups that we're running them against. And one place that wasn't mentioned that is really helpful to the audit team is the log of the trigger. So
Nice.
We actually talking out of turn, but we had users being created without the proper documentation. And the ticket would show up after the user was created. Well, the log's showing us when the user was created exactly down to the minute. And we now holding them to accountable to having their tickets created prior to adding a user. And that log enabled us to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up it's those type of triggers when because the attackers now and the hackers are smart now. We did an audit Tuesday on the Caesars and the MGM attacks, and that's what they did. They manipulated the roles and the permissions on the IAM, and features like YouAttest triggers on the key roles can help you detect and then mitigate those types of attacks. Take it away, Ashley.
Perfect, thank you. So Kashyap, can you show another advanced feature, our SOD segregation of duties functionality?
Sure. So we have this other feature. We call it SOD rules. We applied it on the application level and on the group level as well. Instead of defining the rules ourselves, we just left it to our customers to define those rules. When they come in here, they can create their own application and group SOD rules. How? I'll just show you now here. We can, just like in triggers, just name the SOD rule. So you can select that rule at the time when you're creating an application or group audit. Um, let's say test. And now it gives you and an or functionality if, for example, you have a group called finance, right? You need to find out if anyone from account receivable or from IT or from dev or from sales department have access to that group. Because if they have, that shouldn't be the case. They shouldn't have access, or marketing should not have access to the finance group within the environment. So what the customer can do, they can define the group name. For example, I want to know if there is anyone from sales department part of my finance group when I create the finance audit, or anyone from, let's say, dev team. If anyone has access to my finance group, I want to know if that's the case. So you save that rule. You tell the tool, flag the users as highly privileged based on the mentioned rules in YouAttest campaign. And once it's done, assign the privileged user to this reviewer. And I can name that reviewer over here just by searching, and I save the rule. So what happens is when you create a finance audit, and if you find out that any person from these two departments are also part of that group, or they have access to it, those users, they get flagged. So once you get, let's say, if we create a group audit over here, let's see, I'll just demo it for this purpose. And when you get the flag, you know what to do with that user. I mean, instead of taking action in YouAttest, you can just get the report out or mention it to your IT department that this needs to be taken care of. So once you are doing this, you will see right under the delegation workflow, you will see the SOD rules. It'll pop up, give you a drop down, and then from there you can select that particular SOD rule. For example, I create this test. You create this SOD, and when you create the group audit, it's going to flag that user if it finds a user from any of those two groups, because you put an and condition over there. Right? You can put an or condition, so it's either this or that, and it will flag that user if it appears in your group audit for finance. Make sense?
Perfect.
Beautiful.
So Garrett, can you introduce the last feature, our AI-based identity trust score functionality?
Absolutely. Let me share my
And
screen.
let me give the screen. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
no worries. No worries. I'm just hitting buttons. There we go. All right, there we go. Yes, let's talk AI. Let's talk. When you talk AI and you talk over there, let's talk zero trust. And hope I don't lose 50% of the audience, because actually zero trust is pretty cool. We did a great webinar actually hosted with the CISA, the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, with one of their evangelists, Don Hester, and we talked through this. And it was really, we just simplified the discussion. We say most organizations are in traditional phase. They're doing what? In everything. But then let's talk governance. They're doing ad hoc governance, spreadsheets, emails, etc. And then we take them up the journey up to the optimal state. I'll show you how. So do you attest, right? This is where you're at. You're with emails and spreadsheets. Not bad. It just doesn't work. It's all there prone. It's manual. It's chaotic, etc. As Dan let us know, the YouAttest product can take you immediately over to the initial phase, which is, let's automate it. And then let's start using some of the advanced features like the triggers that you know in real time. And that takes you to the advanced state. The optimal state, and I'll be doing a bunch of prezos on this, is when you start taking information, what they call intelligence, which is AI. You take the intelligence, which we're going to show you in a second, from YouAttest, which is we built an AI model and then give you an AI trust score, and then you feed it to the other components. So let's walk you through this, okay? So this is our product. We've done millions, literally millions, like 3.5 million role attestations. And we've been pulling this information from the IAMs, Okta, Zero AD, Jump Cloud, Ping, etc. So what we did is we trained some models. And the models, and the number one helping here, is an overprivileged model. It looks at the groups of your user and then the other users in that group and goes, good gosh, this guy's a sales guy and he's got AWS privileges, he's got finance privileges, he's got all this other stuff that's out there. Okay. And then we also take in other factors like Kashif just showed that we have segregation of duties ability. Well, if you have an SOD violation, that should lower your trust score. And then we have this secret sauce that I guarantee we'll get the patents on then. When's the last time any human type has actually looked at this user? And that should reduce the score as it ages. Okay? That's it. And that brings you to the score. And then Kasha can show you the dashboard and where this is and how this can help you view it. But this is giving you better insight and better governance of your users, not where it authenticated from, not the IP address. We're not, that's Hyper, that's Secure Auth, that's other products like that. Fine, nothing wrong with that. We're giving you information no one else is giving you, which is trust in the actual identity. The identity, once the authentication, what you should authorize that user into. And if you follow Gartner, yeah, that takes us into the ITDR space, identity, trust, detection, and response. Take it away, Kashif. Why don't you show a little of that?
Sure, and here's my screen once again. Do you see it, Ashley?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, so here's what Garrett was showing you. It's live. It's not screenshot here. What you see is group anomaly, SOD violation, and last reviewed on data. Just Garrett just showed you in the prezo. But let's go in here. Any user that shows that they're at high risk, what do we get when we click on that user, when we expand upon that? Let's say group anomalies. And you can set those up yourself. For example, we have set the high risk at 90% if it's exhibiting deviation, greater than 90%. And medium is at 45 to 90%. You can set it up differently with a different number. And low is, anything less than 45% deviation. We show it under low risk user. But let's say if I click on this user that's showing high risk, what we show here is the properties. I mean, what's the report date? What's the severity? It's high. Status is open. Description. It clearly says this user is exhibiting deviation of greater than 90% compared to the other users within a group based on their assigned applications. What do we need to do to remediate this? We need to remove the user from this application. So you give the application names. Okay, these are a bunch of applications you need to remove this user from. And once you do that, it's going to, just close the incident. It's going to move this user to a lower risk tier. So instead of showing it high, it will show you maybe medium or low case. And then you can go on to the next one and see what the reason for this user to appear in the high risk as well and then remediate. It's just what you need to do. So you can, or any IT person can go in and remove that user from these particular applications that were recommended for remediation, and you solve the problem.
Very cool.
Perfect. Thanks, Kashif. So we have a few questions that came in on the LinkedIn Live, so feel free to write more. But in the interim, so Dan, I have a question for you. What are the key documents an auditor requests for during the attestation?
Well, the first thing that they request is the access list, the user list, along with a dated user list, of course. So that, along with the view of the application to show, that you're doing everything date, time sensitive. So they want to see dates and times, lists of users, and then they want to see who is doing the attestation. So a copy of the reviewer, and then the reviewer's reviewer. So like it says in the PDF document that you have, it shows all three levels that we use right in there. And that covers most of it after we get the list of the users out of the application or the group. That's what most of the auditors are looking for us, for as far as a user attestation.
Perfect. Question for you, Kashif. Do you have to filter to find old expired users or view through reports?
All expired users, can you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry, I was just trying to share the screen.
No, no problem. So the question is, do you have to filter to find old expired users or view through reports?
No, you can view through reports. I mean, if you have old expired users, they're inactive, they appear in your report because they are part of the review process. You need to remove those users if they appear in inactive state. So that's what the reviewer is for. So you need to give access to the people who are actually active within the system. Anyone who's inactive, either you need to remove them from a group, from an application, or from your platform. Maybe they have left the organization, but that's what the report shows, that this person was inactive and you dealt with it.
I want to expand upon that a little bit more. Can you talk about the state and time feature?
Yes, so state and time feature, it works perfectly with our CSV import module, where you have applications that are not part of your maybe Okta environment or your Azure AD or Entra ID, but they're residing outside of that environment without syncing with those platforms. How do you go about doing the audit and access review for those applications? They're in their own silos, right? They're not connected to anything. So that's where our CSV module comes in, where if that resource, if that application has the ability to export the data, the users, the entitlements, their roles, and everything onto a CSV file, we take that CSV file into YouAttest, ingest that information from that CSV, and create an audit out of that. That part is different from the rest of what we just showed, but the overall ability of the tool, the overall functionality of the tool is essentially the same across the board, where you can just create an audit out of that CSV, map the headers with what we have on our side of things, right? For example, username to username, first name, last name, email ID. So once you map that, let me just show you instead of talking about it. Let's say you want to create a CSV audit from a resource that is not connected to your, let's say, Okta. All you have to do, go in here and just pull that file that you've exported out of that resource and upload it to YouAttest. What we do, we give you, let me just do that here. Same process. You select the date. Forget about the delegation workflow for now because we've shown that to you. Let's select the CSV in this case, which is coming from a different resource that is not that's not residing in Okta. Choose that file. It'll take you to the downloaded CSV files you have just saved. Select the file, and on the next page, it lets you map all the headers that you have on your CSV file that you've just uploaded to what we have under UTest fields in here in the tool. Once you do that, it will save those fields once you go in here and save it as a template. So next time you come in, you don't have to go one by one selecting every field. Just go to the template selection here and select the CSV template name that you have saved. Now, when you come down all the way to the bottom of the page where you have saved the template, you will see another option that says run a comparison campaign, right? So this works. Let's say I have created a CSV audit 30 days ago, but now I have to do the audit for the same resource 30 days later. And that resource has 10,000 users in it, right? By checking this box here, run a comparison campaign, you don't have to go through the whole 10,000 users database to just see what changed during those 30 days. Instead, it will compare the two CSVs you've uploaded in two different times, 30 days apart, and it will give you a delta. So maybe within the last 30 days, there were only 10 changes. 5 people joined the organization, 5 people have left the organization. So all you have to do is go through those 10 changes and review them instead of going through 10,000. So that will save you a lot of time when that tools provide you a delta only for those 10 users. That's the feature we call state and time. So it's giving you the delta of the time you're currently running, comparing it with what you had last time, maybe 30 days, 90 days ago, and giving you a delta. What changed during those 30 and 90 days is what you need to review and attest to.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So let's wrap this up. So Dan, can you tell the audience how to reach you?
Sure. Easiest way to come to my personal email would be Dan J _Noonan, NOONAN @yahoo.com. So Dan J _Noonan @yahoo.com.
Awesome. And then we at YouAttest can be reached at youattest.com or just write us at info@youattest.com. Thank you so much for joining, to all our participants as well as Dan. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Good stuff, Kasha. Good stuff, Ash.